There are so many stories that cry out to be told in Haiti, and this one is certainly amazing. A 28-year-old man was pulled alive from the rubble of a market today, almost 4 weeks after the earthquake. The breaking news coming just as CNN's Anderson Cooper and Dr. Sanjay Gupta landed back in Haiti for more of their excellent reporting. Let's bring both of them in live. Sanjay, first to you. You're there at this field hospital, is that right, where this man is recuperating?
That's absolutely right. You know, when we first got the tip that this had happened today, frankly, we weren't quite sure what to believe, but we decided to come here, talk specifically to the doctors and nurses that are caring for him. He is being resuscitated in a tent just over here to my left. It's very hard, Wolf, to sort of absolutely validate the veracity of something like this. But I can tell you all the clues seem to be adding up. We have some pictures of him now of what he looked like according to his family, who we also spoke to. They say he probably lost close to 30 pounds during that time frame. He appears to have been trapped in a rice market, not to the point where he had crush injuries, but to the point where he was trapped. One thing very critical, Wolf, that we kept sort of asking over and over again, trying to get an answer, was the question of whether or not he had any water during this time period. What he told a few of the nurses was that he had a recollection that someone in a white coat would come to him and hand him some water from time to time over the past nearly 4 weeks, Wolf. But again, when he came in, his vital signs were relatively stable. He had blood work done that looked like he was someone who was very dehydrated, but he is being resuscitated right now, right over here in this tent, Wolf.
Sounds like someone who was hallucinating, thinking about if you're going through the rubble like that, somebody showing up in the white coat, that's something that your mind can play some games with.
I think there's no question that he is confused. He remains confused. When we saw him a little while ago, he still thought that he was under the rubble. I don't think even as of now, several hours later, he has come to the realization that he has in fact been rescued. According to some of the nurses who spoke to him right when he came in, you know, and this is sort of almost haunting when they were telling me this, but they talked about the fact that he had heard bulldozers in the area, bulldozers actually going in that area and excavating particular lots. He was hearing those noises. I think obviously concerned that, you know, if he wasn't found, that bulldozers would come in that lot as well. So I think mentally, physically, emotionally, all very taxing.
Yeah, Anderson, after a week away, you're now back there. Anything in these first few hours that you're back jump out at you, surprise you, what you're seeing?
Well, we've spent the whole day driving around the city talking to people, and what's really stunning is kind of how life finds a way, that even you know, new businesses have cropped up even on top of the rubble of old businesses. People are sleeping out on the street. One young man we talked to was able to have a generator, had some electricity. He was selling, he would plug people's phone chargers into his electrical outlets and sell the electricity basically so people could recharge their phone. And the tent city, these makeshift tent cities that now house, according to the UN, as many as 460,000 people in the city of Port-au-Prince. They've really become like shanty towns. They're much more permanent settlements, corrugated tin houses, in some cases, heavy plastic sheeting being used. So it's remarkable the degree to which sort of the abnormal has become normal.
We spoke in the last hour, Anderson, about the fear of the rainy season starting in March. What could happen to all those people who are living basically with a piece of cloth over them? It's not even, as you point out, a tent, but you know what? Not far beyond that is hurricane season, and God only knows what could happen if a hurricane or even a tropical storm were to hit Haiti.
Well, you know, that's the worst case scenario. I mean, this island, of course, has been devastated by hurricanes in the past. Terrible flooding, Gonaives a couple of years ago. But yeah, the rainy season is supposed to start very soon, just a couple of weeks in early March. And really no one has a clear answer of what's going to happen to these hundreds of thousands of people who are out sleeping on the street. I mean, some of them don't have any coverings at all, or any kind of covering that, if they do have it, it'll certainly fall apart or get completely drenched and soak through very quickly in any kind of rain. So there was talk of kind of moving people to more permanent settlements, and tens of thousands of people have been moved, but the vast majority are still in these shanty-like makeshift encampments, which are very susceptible to rain, to bad weather, and that's going to only add to the fear of the spread of disease.
Well, what about that, Sanjay, the spread of disease? How worried should we be that disease could kill thousands of additional people who happen to have survived the earthquake?
I think Anderson's absolutely right. When you talk about what people often refer to as a second wave of disease immediately in the aftermath of some sort of natural disaster, the reality is, I think from experience, we don't really see that. This idea that, cholera or typhoid could kill even more people than the earthquake itself. Having said that, the rainy season poses a whole new set of challenges. What would otherwise be relatively harmless infections can spread much more easily. Tetanus, for example, which is something, people have never even seen a case of, most people in the United States, that can become a real problem as these spores, tetanus spores, sort of become more activated and more likely to infect. So you can see all sorts of things that are really, really worsened by the rainy season. And I think a lot of focus on that right now, Wolf.
Anderson, correct me if I'm wrong, but you and Sanjay personally, you made the decision to go back to Haiti this week. It wasn't our bosses, our executives said you must go back. You guys decided, because of our commitment, that we're not going to abandon this story, even as a lot of other news organizations are simply walking away. Tell us what went through your mind, Anderson, a little bit.
Well, it's interesting. I don't think Sanjay or I actually even really talked about it. I think we both sort of independently came to the decision Friday night, and I started talking to my producers, and I know he started talking, and then when we actually hooked up Saturday, we decided, absolutely, we should be coming back. I think the question isn't why are we back? I think the question is why aren't more people here? I mean, this story is ongoing. Hundreds of thousands of people are still in need, which is as great as it was 2 weeks ago when a lot of people were here covering this story. So I think there's a lot of concern among people here, certainly people here who have access to media or television or radio, who are very concerned that there's a huge drop-off in the reporting on this story. And I mean, look, Wolf, this has become a shanty town behind me with tens of thousands of people in it. Before, when we were here, it was just a makeshift encampment. These people are not going away anytime soon, and their needs continue. The needs for doctors and nurses, medical supplies, food supplies, and water. I mean, it's all the same as it was. It's just there's less interest in it internationally, and that's a real concern because that leads to a drop-off in donations. That leads to a drop-off to people actually coming here to do the important work that needs to be done.
Yeah, excellent thought. Sanjay, you want to add anything?
Well, I focus on medical stories, as you know, Wolf, and I think there's a thing that I refer to as a venting of compassion. I think after something like this happens, there is a outpouring of compassion, which is a very heartening thing to see. We now know, Wolf, how the story might end, though, if that compassion doesn't continue. People they're not getting follow-up, Wolf, after receiving life-saving operations, after receiving amputations. Their lives are saved, but they simply cannot live a life unless they continue to have good resources and good care. You have people who need chronic disease management as a result of what's happening. You have people who don't have homes, who aren't getting their medications. Tuberculosis is starting to become more rampant here. And by the way, Wolf, tuberculosis here in Haiti, if it becomes drug resistant, that's not something that's isolated to Haiti. That's something that affects the whole world. So people they shouldn't just need to care. They absolutely have to care about what's happening here. And you can't, simply do the acute phase of things, save lives, and then not follow up. And I think that's what we're hoping to remind people.
And my commitment in the Situation Room is to continue our reporting from Haiti every day. We hope you guys will join us while you're there every single day. Thanks very much for what both of you are doing, Anderson Cooper, Sanjay Gupta. Stay with CNN, by the way, for a special investigation on millions of dollars that simply vanished from Haiti before the earthquake. Join Anderson on AC 360 tomorrow. It all begins at 10 p.m. Eastern. He's going to have a lot more coming up later tonight on AC 360 as well.